I am Julian, 20 years old, a sophomore at a small college town where autumn always carries the scent of maple leaves and the sound of shoes clacking against brick sidewalks. I once thought my life would be neatly confined to pages of American history books, late-night coffee shops, and a few shallow relationships just deep enough not to hurt anyone. Then Marcus appeared, like a diagonal slash across the straight paper I'd carefully folded. I met him in the library, where white light poured down on long wooden tables and every sound was wrapped in silence. Marcus sat across from me, not looking, but I felt his presence like the warmth from a steaming coffee cup. He was tall, broad-shouldered, in a faded gray hoodie, his eyes dark like a long-held secret. I glanced at the name on the spine of his notebook, Marcus Hale, and it felt like I just read the title of a chapter one knew I couldn't stop midway through. That afternoon, rain fell lightly on the windows. I was twisting my pen without writing a word when Marcus spoke in a low, husky voice. "Are you trying to understand the lesson, or win a silent battle with that pen?" I let out a small laugh. "Maybe both, but it seems like I'm losing." A smile flickered across his face, hard to catch like lightning behind thick clouds. We talked, at first about homework, then about unimportant things that somehow felt very important. The nearest pizza place to campus, the bands he liked, the movie that made me cry recently. I discovered Marcus liked empty roads late at night and hated surprise hugs. I didn't say that I was starting to want to be the person he'd let hug him unexpectedly. In the days that followed, we met often without planning. The library, the basketball court, the campus coffee stand. It was as if the university shrank just to make us bump into each other. One evening, we sat on the dorm steps, watching yellow lights fall on the dew-wet grass. Marcus asked, "Julian, are you afraid of the dark?" Pondered. "Depends on the kind of dark. Some is just the absence of light. Some is the feeling of not belonging anywhere." He was silent for a long time. I could almost hear him swallowing unspoken words. Then Marcus changed the subject, talking about upcoming exams, wanting to switch majors, about a distant city where he grew up but didn't want to return to. I noticed that when he smiled with his lips, his eyes still didn't fully open. Closeness came lightly, like mist, without noise. We studied together in the study room late into the night. Sometimes our shoulders brushed, and I felt my heart react like a drum missing a beat. I knew I was drifting out of my safe zone, but I wasn't looking for a way back. There's a kind of light you can only see after passing through darkness, and I began to suspect that Marcus was the switch I didn't dare flip. One heavy rainy evening, the dorm lost power for a few minutes. The whole hallway plunged into thick blackness, with only panicked laughter and hurried doors opening and closing. I stood still in my dark room, hearing my heart pound against my chest. Then there was a soft knock. It was Marcus. "You okay?" His voice was small but steady. I didn't know how he found my room in the dark, but that fact made my heart light up. "I'm fine." "You? I just thought you might not like the dark." He paused, then chuckled softly. "Now it turns out I don't like not knowing if you're okay." Those words hung between us, like the hallway light that just flickered back on, illuminating a distance both tiny and too vast. When the light returned, we stood so close our breaths intertwined. I saw his eyes clearly, dark, but no longer frightening. I said softly, as if talking to myself, "Maybe I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm just afraid of losing the light." Marcus didn't reply, but he didn't step back. And sometimes not retreating is already an answer. The following days, the world seemed to have its own axis just for us. We shared headphones while sitting on the grass, split a sandwich before class, and argued about which city had the better skyline. I didn't say the two words my heart had been murmuring for a while. As for Marcus, he was still like light slipping through curtains, enough to illuminate but never fully open. The next day, I caught myself smiling at my phone screen just because of a good morning text from him. I'd never been that person. Every familiar straight line suddenly curved slightly, and I let them curve without fixing them. Something was approaching, and I was both afraid and eager for it to happen. The weeks that followed passed like a film in slow motion. I started measuring time not by class schedules or credits, but by moments with Marcus. the sound of him tapping his pen on the table when thinking, the faint scent of soap when he sat next to me, the slight bow of his head when embarrassed. I knew I was diving deeper, and strangely, I didn't want to stop. One Friday evening, the campus buzzed with the school's football game. I'm not the crowd type, so I escaped to the backyard of the social sciences building. The night sky stretched wide, thin clouds like pencil sketches. I heard familiar footsteps behind me. Without turning, I knew it was Marcus. You escaping the cheers too? I asked. Not exactly, Marcus replied, standing beside me. It's just too noisy to hear what I'm thinking. We were silent together. A comfortable silence, as if we'd agreed not to fill it with words. I glanced at his profile lit softly by yellow light. His jawline firm but eyes soft. I wanted to ask so many things about his family, the real reason he hated surprise hugs, the thin scar on his left wrist that he always pulled his sleeve over. But those questions stayed in my throat, waiting for a signal I didn't have. Marcus broke the silence first. Julian, if one day I'm not like you think I am, what would you do? I turned to him. I'd take a few minutes to catch my breath. Then I'd still be here. He smiled, the smile not reaching his eyes. You talk like light, but sometimes light is dangerous. And sometimes, I said slowly, darkness is what's scary. Marcus looked up at the night sky. Maybe we're just trying to learn how to exist where those two meet. We didn't say more, but the conversation flowed underground, like a stream under thin ice. I felt a door between us, slightly ajar, opening a bit more each day. I wanted it to swing wide, but I was also afraid of what lay behind it. Another late afternoon, my class ended early. I unconsciously headed to the gym because I knew Marcus was often there. The door was cracked open, the sound of a ball bouncing off the backboard echoing. I stood outside watching him shoot alone. Clean, precise movements, as if his body knew what to do while his mind hesitated. In that moment, I realized something so simple it stunned me. I loved Marcus. Not a vague or curious love, but one with weight, with momentum, pulling me toward him every day. That evening, we ate hamburgers at the small diner outside the campus gate. Old country music played in the background, the smell of hot, crispy fries filling the air. Marcus propped his elbows on the table, staring out the window as if elsewhere. I asked gently, "What are you thinking about?" "Home," he replied. "Or rather, the place I once called home." I waited. Marcus rarely revealed his past. He exhaled, then spoke as if about someone else. His father was strict to the point where silence became the rule. His mother quiet but her eyes always full of worry. When Marcus realized he was attracted to other guys, the whole house turned into a windowless room. Unspoken arguments, averted glances, dinners with only the clink of utensils on plates. Finally, he went to college, not to start over but to escape. I promised myself, Marcus concluded, that I wouldn't let anyone see that dark part again. I gripped my cold water glass until my fingertips tingled. "Marcus," I said softly, "darkness doesn't make you less valuable. It just says you've been through places light doesn't reach." He looked at me for a long time. In that moment, I saw his eyes shimmer like a lake rippled by wind. Then Marcus shook his head, as if rejecting something too fragile. "Julian, you don't understand. The people I care about, I usually end up hurting them." "Then let me decide if it's worth it," I replied, my voice shakier than I thought. We left in the cold wind. On the brick path, the last maple leaves lay still like unsent letters. At the dorm steps, Marcus stopped. He turned to me, his eyes both resolute and afraid. "Julian," he said, "I'm not good at being light for anyone, but I've gotten used to you being here, and that scares me." I felt my heart tighten then release, like a string pulled to its limit. "I'm scared too," I confessed, "but I'm more scared of not saying it." There was no flowery confession. No soundtrack. Just two young American guys standing under the old yellow dorm light, trying to acknowledge what we both knew. He stepped closer, not touching, but close enough for me to hear his breathing. Then Marcus turned away, as if staying one more second would shatter all self-control. Best. End it here for tonight, he whispered. Good night, Julian. He left, leaving me on the steps with questions. But amid the disappointment, I realized another truth. That door had opened a little more. And perhaps, to let light flood in, we have to give darkness a chance to speak first. That night, I lay staring at the ceiling, pale in the weak streetlight filtering through the curtains. I wondered if love is what makes people brave, or if it's the fear of losing it that teaches us courage. In my mind, his name echoed like a prayer without a church. Marcus. I didn't know if the road ahead would be light or dark, only that I no longer wanted to walk it alone. The next day, the campus brightened with early winter sun, a cold but clear light edging everything in silver. I took my notebook to the lawn in front of the library, pretending to read but really just waiting for a text from Marcus. The chat was silent. I reminded myself he didn't owe me anything, but hearts never listen to reason. Late afternoon, as I packed up, my phone buzzed softly. A message from Marcus. You free? Meet me in the instrument room in the basement of Fine Arts. The old instrument room wasn't a place people stumbled into. It was tucked away, narrow stairs, the smell of aged wood mixed with cold metal strings. I pushed the door, the hinge creaking softly. Marcus sat on a wooden chair, holding a worn guitar, warm yellow light falling on his tousled hair. I didn't know you played guitar, I said, softly as if afraid to shatter the atmosphere. Not well, he replied, but it's more honest than I am. Marcus strummed a few simple chords. The sound rang out raw, husky like his voice. He didn't look at me as he sang, in a near whisper about a guy walking in darkness, carrying the fear of being seen, and another person, not loud, just sitting beside and lighting a small lamp in hand. The song was unfinished, stopping mid-sentence as if he didn't dare finish. I wrote half of that, Marcus said, setting the guitar down. The rest, I don't know how it'll end yet. I stepped closer. You called me here? To say something? Marcus clenched his hands, knuckles whitening. Julian, I've gotten used to the dark. It has its own order. No expectations, no disappointments. When you came, everything changed. I see myself wanting more, and that terrifies me. I don't ask you to not be afraid, I replied. I just hope you won't push me away because of fear. Marcus's eyes wavered. What if I hurt you? I smiled sadly. That could happen. But not loving and still hurting is worse. There was a long silence, long enough to hear the air conditioning hum. Then Marcus said, his voice low and brutally honest. Julian, I like you. More than I thought I was allowed to. Those words fell heavy and warm on my chest, like a coat someone drapes over your shoulders when the air turns cold suddenly.
Irraplia, no hesitation.
I love you. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, like someone surfacing after holding their breath too long. He didn't rush to hug me, didn't kiss, didn't do anything dramatic like in movies. He just opened his eyes and whispered, Stay. Okay. I sat on the floor beside him. We leaned against the wall, shoulders touching. We didn't need more than that. Important things sometimes come in surprisingly simple forms. Two guys in the basement of an arts building, sharing a new kind of silence. The silence of those who've just named what they've been hiding. But love isn't an instant healing magic. It's like light through a window, beautiful, but still casting shadows. In the days after, Marcus became both closer and more distant. Some days he texted nonstop, telling me about class, the tough philosophy professor. Other days he vanished suddenly, not replying for hours. I tried not to interpret everything in the worst way, but insecurity slipped through every crack. One evening, as I prepared for bed, there was urgent knocking at my door. Marcus stood outside, no coat, cheeks flushed from the cold wind. He said very softly, Can I come in? We sat on the bed. Marcus bowed his head, his body tense like a string about to snap. My dad called tonight, he said. He asked me straight out if the rumors at school were true. I swallowed. And you? Didn't answer, Marcus exhaled. But he said one thing. Don't do anything you'll be ashamed to look back on later. He smiled bitterly. Weird, right? People talk about their own love like it's a sin with an expiration date. I placed my hand on the back of his. Marcus flinched slightly, but didn't pull away. His pulse pounded under hot skin. I said, "There's nothing shameful about being yourself. And if the future looks back and still hurts, at least it's real." Marcus looked up. In those dark eyes, determination and fear battled. Then he did what we'd both avoided all this time. He took my hand. Our fingers interlaced. A move both simple and solemn like an unspoken vow. "Give me time," Marcus said. "I'm learning to step out of my own darkness." "I'm here," I replied. "Light isn't in a hurry." We sat like that for a long while, hands clasped, no need for more words. I realized that love isn't just the brilliant moments, but patiently sitting beside someone in their gray areas. And at that intersection of light and dark, we began to truly exist as us, no longer two parallel lines. That night, when Marcus left the room, he hugged me very gently. The hug he'd once said he didn't like. But now, he didn't let go right away. His chin touched my shoulder, warm breath by my ear. Marcus whispered, "Thank you for not leaving." The door closed behind him, and I stood there, my heart both aching and warm. I understood that the road ahead wouldn't be all light. There would be deep shadows, days he'd retreat into his shell, calls from family pulling him back to a past he wanted to forget. But I also understood something else. I chose to stay. Not because I thought I could save him, but because with Marcus I felt more alive as myself. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, small white flakes drifting slowly onto the silent campus. Streetlight glowed through the snow, creating a soft, hazy halo. I suddenly thought, maybe it's not light against darkness, but those two together making this world, like us. Winter truly arrived. The campus donned a thin white coat, paths shoveled into narrow trails winding around red brick buildings. Marcus and I developed new habits. Drinking hot cocoa at the all-night cafe, studying together in the common room with windows fogged by steam, competing to see who could warm their hands faster by blowing on them. Those little things built a world just right for two. But not every day was smooth. Some mornings, I'd wake to find Marcus keeping an invisible distance. He'd sit beside me, still smile, still tease, but his eyes were far away. I learned not to panic about it. I reminded myself that loving someone sometimes means respecting their uneven breaths. One afternoon, while I was on duty in the computer lab, Marcus texted, "Meet me at the bus stop outside the campus gate?" I threw on my coat and ran out. The cold slapped my face, more awakening than any coffee. Marcus stood there, hands in pockets, a deep blue scarf standing out against the snow. He looked at me, his smile thin like a thread holding everything from breaking. "Can you come with me for a bit?" he asked. We boarded a nearly empty city bus. The plastic seats were icy, windows plastered with peak hour schedules. The city receded outside, Christmas shops with twinkling lights, couples arm in arm hurrying in the wind. Marcus stared out the window for a long time before speaking. "I need to say this somewhere not part of campus, not our daily routine," he said slowly. "That way I can dare to." My heart skipped a beat. I didn't interrupt. "My dad wants me home for winter break," Marcus continued. "He says it's a chance to fix things, meaning live the way he wants." I felt the bus shake harder than it was. "Will you go?" "Yes." Marcus didn't evade. "Not because I agree with him, but for my mom. She said she misses me. And I think I owe myself a clear conversation, even if it's ugly." We got off at a park by the partially frozen river. Wooden benches dusted with snow, bare trees like black ink sketches. Marcus walked down the stone path, leaving footprints parallel to mine. "Julian," he said, turning to look at me so frankly I couldn't look away. "I don't know what state I'll return in after this trip. I'm afraid I'll shrink back. I'm afraid I'll relearn silence, hiding. And I'm even more afraid of making you wait for something I'm not sure I can hold on to." My chest ached, but my voice was calmer than I felt. "You don't have to promise me anything right now. But there's one thing I need to know. What do you want?" Marcus was silent. Wind tousled his hair. After a while, he said softly, "I want to be myself, and I want you there." Those two things, in my head, have always been on opposite sides. I'm trying to believe they can stand together. I stepped closer, not touching, just to let him know I was right here. "I can't fight for you," I said, "but I'll be the place you return to, whether you're tired, messed up, or unsure about everything. I can do that." Marcus's eyes suddenly welled up. He chuckled softly, a choked sound. "You always say things that make me feel lighter and want to cry more." We sat on the freezing wooden bench. Marcus took out his phone, hesitated, then set it face down beside him. "I want to keep this moment without any notifications interrupting," he said. We sat for a long time, talking about ordinary things. Favorite childhood foods, the first time learning to bike, the first song memorized. But beneath all those stories was an undercurrent, fear of separation. Fragile hope that this wasn't just a winter dream. The day Marcus left, the small station was crowded with announcements blaring. He wore a backpack, hair messy under a wool hat. We stood in the quietest corner we could find. I wanted to say so much, but the words became clumsy. Marcus took my hand first. That simple act in public made my heart lurch, not from fear of others seeing, but because I understood what it meant to him. "I don't promise to be strong," he said, "but I promise to be honest, at least with myself. And I'll try not to disappear from you." I nodded, afraid my voice would break if I spoke. I only managed, "I'm here." The train whistle blew. Marcus pulled me into a hug, no longer hesitant, no longer half-hearted. He held tight, as if memorizing my shape with his body. I heard his heart beat steadily under thick layers. When he let go, his eyes shone strangely, holding both the gray winter morning sky and a small flame that refused to die. "Goodbye, Julian," he said. "See you soon." He boarded the train. I stood on the platform, watching the car carrying him fade, until his green coat was a tiny dot vanishing around the bend. I suddenly understood that love isn't always side by side. Sometimes, it's standing still and trusting the other when you can't walk with them. Back at the dorm, the room felt bigger than usual. Marcus's mug still had a coffee stain on the rim. His forgotten scarf hung on the chair back. I sat on the bed and let myself feel the emptiness. Not avoiding, not pretending to be okay. Turns out, loving is also learning to endure the silence where the other's name still echoes in your head. Night fell, snow falling again. I opened a new notebook, writing the first line in small letters. Light and darkness don't oppose each other. They're just finding ways to coexist, like us. Then I closed it, placed it by my pillow, and shut my eyes, not sure what tomorrow would bring, but certain of one thing: our story wasn't over. Winter break dragged like an old clock in my parents' living room in Boston. I went home for a few days, then returned to the dorm earlier than planned, using the excuse of preparing for the new semester. The truth was I wanted to be near things marked by Marcus: the long hallway with pale yellow lights, the cafe corner window where he once complained about bitter espresso, the library bench we accidentally chose. Our messages were sometimes frequent, sometimes sparse. Some days he'd send a photo of a winter beach near his hometown, horizon blurred in fog and small obedient waves. Other days just, "I'm okay." Then silence. That silence wasn't as sharp as before, but still heavy enough to keep me awake on snowy nights. One late evening, Marcus called. No text, no warning. His voice was hoarse, like after a long argument. "Julian," he said, "I'm walking around the neighborhood. It's freezing crazy out here." "I'm in bed," I replied, smiling lightly to reassure us both. "But I'm listening." Wind whistled through the phone, gravel crunching under shoes. Marcus spoke in fragments, as if thinking and arranging words. "My dad," I told him. Not fully, not with terms people argue about online. Just, I like a guy. His name is Julian. I sat up, heart pounding like someone knocking from inside my chest. And then, he was silent for a long time, Marcus continued. Then he said, "I'm choosing a hard path." I said, "The easy path never made me happy." I think, for the first time in my life, I heard my own voice without shaking. There was a small pause. I heard his breathing, distant yet close. Marcus added, I won't detail the conversation. It wasn't pretty like people retell. But I'm not hiding myself anymore. At least not from them. I leaned against the wall, eyes stinging. I'm proud of you, I whispered. Wherever you are, I'm standing beside you. Marcus chuckled softly. I know. Weird. Huh? It's so cold, but I feel warm. We didn't make long-term vows. We talked about the soup his mom made for winter, the neighbor's dog chasing him on runs, the sweater he swore he wouldn't wear but did because of the cold. Those ordinary snippets suddenly carried big meaning. Marcus wasn't running from his life, and he kept me in it. The day he returned to school, snow had melted into rivulets along the curbs, revealing dark brown earth and the scent of damp grass rising under weak sun. I stood in front of the dorm, heart racing so fast it felt like it might show through my coat. When Marcus stepped off the car, I noticed the difference before he spoke. The way he stood straight, the way he looked directly at me without averting. Still Marcus, but his eyes no longer like a locked room. Julian, he called, just that. I stepped closer. We stopped at the distance that last fall had been a safe boundary. This time, no one backed away. Marcus held out his hand. A simple gesture, but it made the world around fade to blurred background. I took it. No hiding. No calculating who was watching. There are hard things ahead, Marcus said, honest as always. There'll be days I'm exhausted, days I'm panicked, days I'm angry at myself for not being easier. But I don't want to retreat into darkness and lock the door anymore. I won't blind you with light either, I replied. We'll go at our own pace. We walked across campus, hand in hand. Neither of us made grand gestures. No need. I heard the last snow melt under sun and my heart ease. At the familiar cafe corner, the red-haired waitress looked at us, smiling quietly. I realized I no longer tensed waiting for judgment. Strange. When you stop hiding, the world doesn't crumble like you'd imagined. In the days after, life was still messy. Piling deadlines, group reports, presentations where I stumbled over words. Marcus still argued with his philosophy professor, forgot umbrellas on rainy days, laughed at my silly jokes. But amid it all, something had changed. Not with fireworks, but with a persistent peace. We were no longer our own secrets. One early spring night, we sat in the empty baseball stadium bleachers, the distant city lights like low stars. Marcus rested his head on my shoulder, breathing evenly. I told him about my dream of writing books, fear of failure, days when I thought love was just a beautiful metaphor. Marcus didn't interrupt. When I fell silent, he said softly, I'm not light. I'm not darkness. I'm just me, and I want to be here with you in all the shades in between. I squeezed his hand. In that moment, I understood our love wasn't a story of one saving the other. It was the story of two young American guys at an ordinary college, learning not to apologize for their feelings, learning to stand at the crossroads of fear and desire, of hurt and tenderness. Wind blew through the bleachers, carrying the smell of fresh-cut grass. I looked at the cloudless sky and whispered, not an eternal promise, just confirmation enough for now. We'll keep going, right? Marcus nodded, his forehead brushing my cheek lightly. Yeah, we keep going. And I knew, despite hard days ahead, unfinished conversations, self-doubts, this story had chosen its direction. Not the easiest path, but the truest one. There, light and darkness were no longer on opposite sides. They stood together, shaping us in this life.